We need phone stands. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. All right. Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to today's live. All right. Hello, and welcome to everybody's. Welcome to the video today. So I'm a little bit divided here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm looking at the computer here. If you're watching on Instagram, I'm over here. So if I'm switching my gaze, just know that that's why, because I have two cameras going. I'll try to look evenly at both. So today we're going to be talking about the savior complex. And this is something that I have a lot of experience with because I grew up with a lot of conditioning around the savior complex and what it means to be a good person and what being a good person is. And I want you to know that before I even start, right, I am coming from a place where I'm still on my journey with this. I am in no way, shape, or form perfect. I have not completely dealt with this shadow in myself, and I will be talking about my experience with this. But I have made massive progress, and I have seen a lot of things, and I think that I can be helpful for anyone who's dealing with this savior complex, this feeling that the world needs saving and you are the one that needs to go out and save it. That the world needs fixing and you are the one that needs to go out and fix it. And this can even be not even necessarily like worldwide savior complex. This can literally be like the people in your life, your friends, your family. You constantly feel like you need to fix people. You feel like you need to save people. You feel like you need to help people. You look out at the disasters in the world and the poverty and the extreme just social injustice and physical injustice and all of these really painful and harmful ways that human beings are living, and you can start to think like, I need to fix it, we need to figure out, find the person who's going to fix it, we need to overthrow the system, you can go into that kind of manic energy place, or it can be very, very depressing, and it can make you feel like you don't deserve to be happy, and you don't deserve to have peace, and you don't deserve to have anything good in your life because the whole world is suffering, and who are you to have something good if everyone is suffering? And also this feeling of wanting to help and wanting to make the world better and wanting to support something changing in the world and not knowing how, right? Like that feeling of just overwhelm, that the world is burning and we have no idea what to do to fix it, but it feels like we need to fix it. And just this kind of underlying feeling that people aren't okay, the world isn't okay, and it's your job to solve it or fix it, and or if you aren't doing that, that you should feel guilty and feel terrible and like you're not worthy of having joy or peace or anything in your life because the world is suffering. And this is what I want to talk about today, because this, like I said, for me, has been a massive part of my experience. And I feel like I can offer some tools to move forward on the path, because like I said, I'm not perfect. I've been called out on this in a very public way within the last year, even with the processing work that I'm doing. And as hard and as painful as it is, I was called out just like literally yesterday by a friend for doing this thing, this approaching people as though they're broken and in need of my fixing. And as hard and as painful as it is to hear that my impact doesn't match my intention, what I'm wanting to cultivate here is the understanding that the savior mentality and the savior complex is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature and what is really happening. So if we truly just kind of step back and take our emotions out of it for a second and understand that if what we are saying we actually want is to support this world in becoming a better place for everybody, we want to know why it isn't. We want to know what's the problem, essentially, so that we can actually be proactive in fixing it. We don't want to be stuck in what we think is the problem and what we think is the solution if that's not reality, right? So this is what this video is going to be about, is that it's both this pragmatic thing that we can take our emotions and our kind of like self out of it and just be like, if we pragmatically want to help, we're going to have to kind of come to terms with what reality is. And if that is different than what we thought it was, we need to change. We don't need to ask the world to change. Yes? And this is about learning to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for where the intention is coming from, and seeing that, like, all of us who have a savior mentality that teaches us and taught us and gets us to move into these places where we are overstepping our boundaries, where we are putting people in a position where we're saying, I'm the rescuer, I'm going to fix it, you're broken, you're bad, you're in need, and I know what you need, and I'm going to give it to you, and I'm the savior, which is a complete, like I say, misunderstanding of what's usually going on with people who are in need. And where we can start to see, like, okay, where that came from, where I got that, why I have that, and then being able to understand that our intentions are good. We're not bad people, right? Because it is true, we're going to look at this, that the savior mentality is pretty toxic and it causes harm. And this is something that a lot of us have a really hard time admitting to ourselves and admitting when we're called out on it, like me, that what we're doing to try to help, that what we're doing to try to make this world a better place isn't actually helping or making the world a better place. It's based on a faulty understanding, so our actions that we're taking from our good intention, the impact doesn't match the intention, right? And we need to learn how to have compassion for ourselves and self-love and understand that, like, okay, I didn't mean to cause harm. And in fact, I meant to help. I meant to do something good. My action, right, the action that I took came from the intention of wanting to support and wanting to make the world a better place. But if the impact doesn't match the intention, we need to change the action, right? That it doesn't mean we're bad. It doesn't mean we're horrible. It doesn't mean we're, like, if the impact was negative, this doesn't have to mean we beat ourselves up and we hate ourselves and we shame ourselves and we think we had bad intentions. We didn't have bad intentions. But we have to be able to trust reality and say that, okay, but if the people that I'm trying to help or the people that I'm trying to serve or the impact that I'm trying to have isn't the actual outcome, yes, I need to change my action. I need to change what I'm doing so that the impact and the intention match. Yes? Because if impact and intention don't match, action needs to change. What we're doing needs to change so that the outcome matches the intention. And that is why we want to evolve out of savior complex. Because savior complex has good intention, right? All of us want to see everyone having what they need. All of us want to see less suffering. All of us have that natural human empathy where we want to make the world a better place for people. That when we see people suffering, when we see people not having what they need, when we see the pain in the world, we want to do something about it. That's a beautiful, lovely, excellent intention. Yes? And I believe that everyone who is trying to help and who is doing their best to try to make this world a better place is starting from that innocent place of wanting to have a positive impact. But again, we also have to be pragmatic. We also have to listen to the people that we're supporting, that we're attempting to help. We have to look at the impact and say, again, If the impact doesn't match the intention, the action needs to change. We need to learn something new. We need to understand that how we thought we were going to help isn't the way we're going to help. How we thought we were going to improve things isn't improving things. So we need to learn something new. We need to learn something different. We have to understand more about why what is happening and what is actually going to be helpful so that we can be helpful. Okay? Because, right, a lot of the time with the savior mentality, we get in this cycle of, I see the big problem, I've decided I know what the answer is, I go out and do whatever it is that I think is going to help. Yes? And a lot of the time, that means overstepping our boundaries. That means infantilizing the people that we're trying to help. That means not understanding where our place actually is, where we actually have the capacity to help, and where we don't. Okay? And then it can lead to creating situations where people are then dependent on us, and that doesn't feel good. Okay? Where we lead to, like I say, we cause harm, we erase the people we're trying to serve, we make it about ourselves instead of making it about them. We get caught up in this, I'm the one that has to do this, I have to save, I have to fix, I have the solution, and it kind of starts to become this more self-focused thing than the actual outward focused thing, right? Like what we're doing is we're projecting our discomfort of what is happening out onto the world, and we're saying, I want to fix this so that I'll feel better, versus actually wanting the other person to feel better, right? Like we can be coming from our own traumas and our own wounds, and then that can lead to a kind of like helplessness, hopelessness, where we just feel like we just have to give up, right? Where we feel like we can't change everything, we can't fix everything. What we try doesn't solve the whole problem. People still have issues. People still aren't there, whatever it is that our projection of where we want them to be is. And then we feel like we should just give up, and that there's no hope, and that things can't change, and there is no solution. And that is what we want to get out of, right? That loop, those cycles of being over, like, self-important, not actually really paying attention to what is actually needed and what's helpful, versus just giving up, saying, throwing your hands in the air, saying we can't do anything. Because the reality is, okay, and I'm going to give you the end, and then we'll get there eventually, is that each and every single one of us has a role to play in making this world a better place. And I don't even mean that in like some cosmic plan, divine thing. It's just by the very nature that we are all here. That you exist means you have an impact. Okay? You exist within a system. You exist within a community. You exist within a world where you are connected to everything else, in the sense that your life is not just an individual thing that is happening independent of everything else. Your life is a part of the grander experience. Okay? So, and understanding too that so much of the suffering and the pain and the problems of the world come from the base of a community that's out of alignment, right? A system that's out of alignment, a way of being where all the people who are participating, we've created these systems that don't work to support the life of the general population. We've created a lot of systems that support massive profits for small groups of people. We've created a lot of systems that create lots of power concentration for small groups of people that require the rest of the masses, the rest of us, to be compliant in some way, right? To be manipulatable, to be kind of able to be fooled into living a certain way that continues to support these systems of power and resource imbalance. Yes? That causes all the people that need saving to the people who have savior complex. So what I believe, and I could be wrong, but this is my belief, is that pragmatically, fixing the world isn't really what we want. When we can take a step back and we can understand that generally speaking, when humans are resourced, they can figure things out for themselves. Humans are pretty good at when they have the base ingredients, the base fundamentals of safety and provision and education and just these kind of general things. When we're given actual opportunities to live productive, whatever, balanced lives, we do. Okay? So much of the inequality and the thing we think people need saving from. People don't need saving. Okay? Most of the time, 99.999% of the time, people need resourcing and an opportunity. And people say people throw their opportunities away. This is not statistically true. Generally speaking, when people are given, and I also want to say too that, right, of course, we also have to understand that we have victim mindset and disempowerment. That's what we need. We need that, or what we need to fix or change, right? So I think we have to understand that, like, yeah, the problems on the planet are pretty big. And we're not going to find a solution. We're not going to find a solution to the power imbalances that exist. It's not that simple. Okay? We are going to have evolution over time. People changing the way that they do things. People slowly changing systems. This is what I'm saying. I don't believe that we're going to have to violently overthrow the government or whatever it is that's currently happening in order to create new systems. I really believe that each and every one of us awakening to what I'm going to talk about today in this like pragmatic evolution of savior mentality into what is actually pragmatically something I can do to support the world and moving forward. When we understand that, again, when humans are resourced, when humans are given an opportunity to work for themselves and to do what they can do for themselves, most of the time they do it. And that people don't usually need saving. They don't need rescuing. They're not broken. It's people are traumatized, and we have huge lineages of trauma, right? So again, just because sometimes we show up and give a certain people group the tools to farm doesn't mean they're all going to be empowered now, right? Like there's psychological, there's emotional, there's spiritual lineages of exploitation and not having what we need and being victimized and all of these things, that this is going to be an evolution. Humanity is going to evolve. We are not going to arrive. There isn't a solution. It's generation after generation after generation, all of us becoming more pragmatic for what is really required for the human race to move forward, and doing that over and over and over again. So again, how do we bring this back to our own lives? First things first, we have to understand that, especially if you were raised in the Western world, there's a good chance you were indoctrinated into the savior mentality complex, okay? Especially if you were raised with Judeo-Christian religion. And now, I'm not saying Judeo-Christian religion is wrong, or that you shouldn't be a Christian, or that you shouldn't be Jewish, or that you shouldn't be... I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that there's a narrative that's specifically heavy in that line of religion, and this is true for all religion, right? But there's the kind of like savior God mentality that comes down and saves humanity in pretty much every religious hierarchy canon. But especially, like I say, in the Western world, and I'm just going to speak from my experience as someone who was born and raised in the Western world, that like in Christianity, I was raised in Christianity, and the specific Christianity that I was raised into drilled into my head that the problems of the planet were that people are sinful and bad, and that they're lost, right? They're fatally flawed, fatally sinful, and they need to be rescued, right? Like it was drilled into me from day one that I needed to be constantly proselytizing the Bible and the scriptures and getting people saved. Like literally, those were the words that were used, right? Like saving people, giving your heart to Jesus was saving them from themselves. Okay, and I grew up in a codependent household where my caregivers weren't very good at solving their own problems, and it became very clear to me very early that my problems and their problems were my responsibility. Their pain was my fault, and it was up to me to fix it. I had to change myself. I had to change them. And so I grew up very much from all angles being completely indoctrinated that it was my job to save the broken people. Everyone was in pain. And then plus I was super empathetic, super feeling everyone's emotions, everyone's problems. Like people didn't even have to tell me what was going on with them. I could tell what was going on with them. I was extra empathic. And because I had this idea that their pain was somehow my responsibility, I felt responsible for the whole world. I felt like everyone was suffering and everyone was struggling and no one knew how to fix themselves, right? Because I watched as the adults in my life didn't know how to solve their own problems. I watched as people continually did the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results, and then dying of cancer because they just prayed instead of changing their diet or doing anything proactive. I watched as literally, like, right, the people in my church, the people in my schools, the people, my friends, just have the same problems over and 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 over again. And so, of course, again, I get to this place where I'm like, okay, I can see the pattern in what you're doing. I can see why you keep having this problem. Maybe you aren't capable of understanding yourself. It appears to me that you don't know how to help yourself, that you don't know how to fix it. And so I have to do it. I have to tell you what's going on. I have to tell you what's wrong with you, and I will tell you the answer. And I started getting into this habit of, again, being the person that would just come into your life and tell you all the things that you were doing wrong, essentially, and what you should do to fix it. And I believed that was loving. I felt like that was me doing the best that I could for you. From my logical, indoctrinated, autistic, not understanding human emotions, not understanding that people were going to feel not good about that, right? Because to me, I was coming from this very logical place of like, okay, you're in pain, you're having this problem, here's what I think the problem is, here's what you can do different, here's the solution. Why would that not feel good to you? Because I just gave you the solution to your problem. Hello, that's awesome. And constantly being met with like, you're hurting my feelings, you're making me feel bad about myself, you're harsh, you're mean, and me just not understanding. Just being like, what do you mean I'm harsh? What do you mean I'm mean? I'm fully coming from wanting to help you. I'm fully coming from, I'm just giving you the answer. I literally just told you what to do to fix your problem. How could that be mean? How could you possibly be perceiving me as harsh or mean or whatever, right? I am helping you. And then I started getting into working with clients and doing this work that I do and really just wanting, like I say, to save everybody that came into my world, came into my groups, and it was this really unhealthy dynamic I had in the beginning with people of me just telling them I was going to be their rescuer. I was going to give them all the answers, and then they could like emotionally dump on me, and I didn't have any boundaries, and I thought that that's what being a good person was just letting people dump all their problems on me, letting people complain to me, letting people cry to me, letting me do all this stuff, Um, and and I would offer unsolicited advice all the time, and it was just, like I say, this really unhealthy dynamic. And so what I started to learn, what I started to recognize, and what I started to realize was that, again, when we start to approach people from a place of understanding that they are not broken, right? This self-love work that we're doing with ourselves, where we finally start to look at our own coping mechanisms, our own self-sabotage, the ways that we're hurting and harming ourselves, the way we're looping in our own negative self-sabotage behaviors, the way we're looping in our same thoughts, and all of these things we think are wrong with us. Yes? When we can start to show up for ourselves, no longer looking for what's wrong with me and how do I fix it, right? The fundamental tools of the self-love path that I teach, where we're starting to show up with curiosity and compassion. We're starting to show up from, like, why am I like this? Why am I doing this? What are the needs that are not being met? What are my traumas that led me to believe these things about myself and led me to do these things? When we start with our curiosity, we always find that there's nothing broken or bad or wrong with us. We always find that whatever harmful behavior or harmful thought pattern or anxiety or depression or whatever it is that we're in, we got there for a good reason. We got there for a good reason. We were traumatized. We were told that who we are was not okay. We were disempowered in some way. We weren't given what we needed in order to grow, in order to evolve, in order to expand into the person that we're here to become. We were hurt in some way. Okay? And then the self-love path is about figuring out what we need to be supported so that these parts of ourselves that are currently in shadow, currently not being allowed to express how they really are, aren't getting their needs met, and so are addicted and coping, right? These parts of ourselves that aren't actually bad, these parts of ourselves that are just under-resourced and traumatized, can start to be resourced and loved into the light so that they can grow into the thing they were always meant to be. When we can start to take that attitude that we have with ourselves and turn that out and let that be how we interact with the world, this is a far more pragmatic way of figuring out where our true power to help make the world a little bit of a better place actually is. Okay? So this idea that a single person, you or someone else, is going to save the whole world doesn't actually make sense. Because the world we have is still based on the collective doing what the collective is doing. The collective working in collective systems, right? Each individual is making their individual choices or conforming to the thing that they were born and raised into through no fault of their own. The systems that don't support humans evolving to their potential. And then the second thing is understanding that we don't all have the same potential. We're not all the same. We're never going to be equal. We're never going to have a humanity where everyone is equally capable of providing for ourselves in any kind of system. We are always going to have to deal with the idea that we are a varied, mixed group of people who all have the same fundamental, foundational, basic needs. And we all have varying degrees of capacity to get those fundamental, basic needs met. And it kind of doesn't really even matter what kind of system we create. There's always going to be a power imbalance because humanity is never going to be equal. And trying to create an equal society is never going to happen. Right? Like the idea of communism, we are all equal and we're trying to erase individuality and pretend like we're all the same, doesn't work because we aren't and we never will be. We are always going to be different. right? A system that works is a system based on equity, not equality. So we're not trying to make everyone the same. We're not trying to act like everyone's the same. We don't try to create a society where because if we kind of look at capitalism is starting from a fundamental assumption that everyone is equal. We've all been given the same opportunity. We're all equal. So the people that rise to the top have risen there because they deserve to be there. They worked the hardest. They did the best. Everyone else could have done what they did and then just didn't. And so the people who are poor, the people who are addicted, who are struggling, who are traumatized, whatever it is, it's their own fault. They just didn't work hard enough. They just didn't do the right things. They didn't, whatever. And now we don't want to give them anything because that's a handout. We don't want to give a handout. Okay. The reality is, in our capitalist system, like in America and in Canada and in the Western world, what we actually see is that the people at the top were born 3/4 of the way up the mountain. They were born into families with money. They were born into families with resources. They were born into family with access. And so maybe they did go on to create something great. They did go on to do something great. The people at the top on some level worked really hard to do what they do. But they didn't start from nothing. They had an education. They had a good foundation in their upbringing. They had money. They had resources. They had these things. And we have to understand that if we're talking about a handout, we can look at that and say, well, they were given a handout in their childhoods. They were given a childhood of handout. They didn't start from nothing and work their way up to everything. They were given a handout that started them 3/4 of the way up the mountain, that enabled them to get to the top. And the people who are at the bottom, the people who are struggling in our societies, oftentimes, more often than not, work much harder than the people at the top. They work incredibly hard. And there's nowhere to go. And the system is set up so that they can't get an education. It doesn't matter how much they work. They can't make enough money to get out of debt. There's lack of healthcare, lack of just general societal safety nets that make it so that getting out of these situations is impossible. And then what does that lead to? Right? That leads to hopelessness and helplessness and these feelings of being victimized, which leads to addiction, which leads to trauma, which leads to all of the things that come from that people do when they're traumatized. And then we look at them and say, well, look, they're addicted, they're violent, they're whatever they're doing. But look at them, right? Like, we don't want to just give them money, whatever, because they're not responsible. But that's not really true. That's not really what's happening. They were traumatized, they weren't given what they needed, and now they're coping. Now they're doing the best they can to survive in a world that's not supportive of them. Okay? And then when we zoom out and look big picture, again, we're going to see, like, in war-torn countries and all these places, there's just a lot of power imbalance, structure imbalance. There's lack of resources in places, so large portions of the population just don't have what they need, lack of infrastructure, lack of all of these things, and so people are traumatized. People are hurting. People are coping. People are trying to do the best they can with what they've been given, and what they've been given is a really shitty foundation. And that's actually why we live in the world that we live in. Okay? It's complicated. It's complex. And therefore, there isn't a solution. There isn't a thing you are going to do or someone is going to do or we're going to overthrow the system or whatever. And this is how the world is going to get saved. Because the problems of the world are complex problems. And that doesn't mean that we don't have power and that we can't help and that we can't make things better. And then, like I say, in our individual lives, right? Like when we're talking with our friends, when we're talking with our clients, when we're talking with the people that we are in community with, it can be very easy when we have those wounds in us from our childhoods, our traumas, where it was put on us that the world is suffering, other people are suffering, and their pain is your fault and your responsibility. It can be very easy to have this intention that I want to help, I want to make things better, and then we project that victim mentality onto everyone around us. We look at people who are in pain, we look at people who are struggling, we look at people who are hurting, and we think, I need to fix it. That pain is wrong and bad. And it's my fault or it's my responsibility, and I'm not allowed to be happy, I'm not allowed to have peace, I'm not allowed to have joy or anything in my life because these people are suffering, and we're told that we're bad people if we're not helping, we're bad people if we're enjoying our lives when everyone else is suffering. We don't know what to do. And then, like I say, we start to put ourselves in this savior place, which creates an unhealthy dynamic with everyone that we interact with. Because again, the people in our lives, just like the people in the world, aren't in the positions of pain and suffering that they're in because they lack, or because they suck, or because they need saving. Okay? And then the third part of this is, so there's systemic issues, there's trauma, lineage trauma, and all these things. And the last thing we need to understand about being a human is that becoming who we are to become, growing into who we're going to grow into, learning the lessons we need to learn, often requires that we have to go through challenge. Okay? There's some suffering and struggle and pain in the world, in the people that you love, in the systems that exist, that is necessary pain. That is growth pain. That is necessary struggle. That is the metaphor of, if you cut the butterfly out of the cocoon, the butterfly will probably die because it didn't get that struggle of getting itself out, which is vital for that caterpillar, that butterfly, to become a strong butterfly, right? We don't actually want to rob people of their process. We don't want to save and rescue people from their struggle, because oftentimes it is that struggle, and it is that whatever it is they're going through that they need to go through in order to become the person they're trying to become. The struggle isn't even wrong. The pain isn't bad. It's not something that's going wrong. It's actually something going incredibly right. And I think all of us can look at our own lives in times where we struggled, in times where we didn't know what we were doing, and we were struggling and trying to figure things out and not figuring things out and failing and doing all these things, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us. Because it's how we learned. It's literally how we became strong. So this balance of wanting to be someone who is helping to create a more equitable world so that people have the foundations they need to be able to go on the growth path that they are here to grow on. That's the balance we want to strike. Yes? So a flower seed that doesn't have soil and doesn't have water and doesn't have sunlight isn't going to grow. It's not because the seed is broken. It's not because the seed needs fixing. It's the seed didn't get the foundations of what the seed needed to become the plant. It's not broken. So we don't approach the seed and we don't try to fix the seed. The seed is not a victim. The seed just needs resourcing. So we need to learn to become aware of when people just need resourcing. When it's just this is happening because they didn't have the foundations of what they need. And so how can we start to create systems where more and more people have the foundations of what they need? Because that is required for all of us to grow into who we're going to grow into, so that we can then be the people we are here to be that contribute to the community. Because this is the thing that we need to understand about socialism, right? Socialism is not about giving people a handout so they can just be lazy and whatever. When we really understand that, again, generally speaking, when humans are resourced, they naturally grow into something that becomes a person that then gives something back to the society. Most people who are given the basic foundations of a sustainable life, and I mean, this is more and more rare these days, because again, especially like in the Western world, it looks like more and more people are living in situations where they're not in poverty, where they have like their external needs met, money, education, food, clothing, whatever. But we're getting so emotionally and mentally and spiritually traumatized by trying to fit into this system of profit at all costs, of acceptance coming from stuff and status and consumption at all costs. And that I can understand why it can sometimes look like people are just lazy and like they were given everything that they needed and they had everything and they just didn't amount to anything, and they're selfish and they're not community focused. Like, especially in the wellness world right now, like we're seeing a lot of people come out and it's just like their actions are just very selfish, and their form of sovereignty is just what I want the world to be, and everyone should just be conforming to what I need, and if you're not doing that, you suck. You're taking away my freedom, instead of like seeing that I'm a part of a community that is not all everyone like me, and everyone doesn't have the same access as me, and everyone's not here to serve me, and what is my impact on society? Like, people aren't thinking like that, and we can think like, well, they were given everything and they became just selfish and horrible, so we don't want to just give everyone stuff so that they can just become more selfish and horrible. But we have to, again, look at the history of how those people got that way, right? Like, they were raised in a society that is so self-centered and so everyone for themselves and fear-based, right? Like, the foundation of it is still, you fight for your right to have whatever you want, like, as though it's actually possible, and it's not for most people. But this ultra every man for himself idea doesn't actually work overall for our society. It makes us afraid, and it makes us selfish, and it makes us shut down. So that's what I'm saying. When we build a community where there's certain social safety nets, and there's enough support where most people can have a relatively resourced life, you're not going to rescue them. You're not going to rob from them or take from them. The challenge of growing into themselves. Just because you give the seed soil, water, and sunshine doesn't mean it's easy then for that seed to become the flower. The seed still has to go on quite a journey and put forth quite a lot of effort and figure out a lot of stuff and fail and try and do all these things in order to become the flower. You're just by resourcing somebody, you don't take away the struggle of their life. You don't take away the struggle of what they're going to have to do and the inherent struggle of life itself. Okay? And that what we could call the essential struggle, the struggle that is necessary for us to actually be able to grow. That struggle that we don't want to rescue people from, that we don't want to take people out of, that we don't want to save them from. because it's the struggle that they need in order to grow into who they're here to become, into the capacity that they have, right? Like lifting weights at the gym. You don't become fit by watching your personal trainer exercise. You have to do the struggle. The personal trainer can coach you through it. The personal trainer can be support. The personal trainer can give a map for how to train, but they can't train for you. They can't lift the weights for you. They can't run the mile for you. And that, again, is how we start to get out of savior mentality. And we start to get into, okay, people need resourcing. And then where can I be a support for people going on their necessary growth path? Yes? This is how we get out of savior mentality. It's people don't need to be saved. We need to understand trauma. We need to understand not enough. We need to understand systems of actual exploitation and how we are participating in those systems. Okay? This is why I say, ultimately, the biggest impact you have on making this world a better place are your day-to-day choices. The businesses you support, the entertainment you take in, where you spend your money, where you spend your time. These are the things, like how you treat people on a day-to-day basis, the systems of society and culture that you are supporting, right? Because if we keep supporting the systems of billionaires and millionaires by continually believing that we don't have enough and we're not good enough and we're not enough, so we keep pushing ourselves to work harder and be more batteries to the machine and buy more things that we don't need and continue to consume and consume and consume and consume and be in this like trap where we're never seeing where our enough is, right? It doesn't matter how much we donate to charity. It doesn't matter how much we try to help people a lot of the time. It's like, right, like our impact is still feeding the systems that exist. And if more and more and more of us check out of those systems and just start to, like I say, figure out what our enough is, figure out what our enough productivity is, what our enough consumption is, and then where we can live these lives of balance, we are voting for the new system. Because if everyone did that, if everybody did that, if we all stopped participating in the system, the people at the top can't keep forcing us to be in the system. They are requiring us to support them just as much as we are looking to them to support us. And I don't know that looking to the people at the tops of the system to change is really the pragmatic answer here. Like waiting for the world to change. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be collectively, slowly over time, more and more of us change our way of being, so much so that the system, because so many people have changed their way of being, the system becomes what everyone else is doing, right? And these power dynamics just don't work anymore because we're not participating. Everyone isn't doing it. And we're building a new thing where we're, like I say, community minded. So where we start to figure out what our enough is, and then where we have excess, we don't hoard it, we give it away to the people who have not enough based on the system, like literally through no fault of their own. We start to see where the systems of inequality exist and how we can start to redistribute what we have, right? We're not waiting for the billionaires to redistribute their stuff. We just start to do it ourselves. We start to do it ourselves. We start to realize that, again, if everybody did this, if we all just started to say, where can I give my excess away? Where can, to the people who need it? And not in a savior way, because it's not a savior. It's, this is what you should have had. Right? We need to start to think of it more like this. I'm literally giving you a thing you should have been given. I'm giving you the thing that the people at the top were given. That's it. It's not a handout. It's we're evening the playing field. We're just giving everyone the resources that the people at the top had, the chance that the people at the top had. That's redistribution. And we can do that because almost all of us have access in some degree, right? It's not about one person redistributing to everyone or one system. It's just if all of us did our little bit of redistribution that we can do, we would have a huge impact. There is so much power in the collective just doing what the collective can do, right? So I can't give away $1 million, but I can give away $20 a month. I can give $100 a month. That isn't a handout. That's giving it to people who should have had that to begin with. That's where I focus on. It's not charity. And it's not saving. It's not rescuing. It's understanding, it's understanding that when we just give what we had as our foundations to people who didn't get that as a foundation, oftentimes they will then resource themselves. They will go on and do what they need to do. They just needed that soil. They just needed the air. They just needed the sunshine that we got. Right? Okay? And then the next thing is then we become supports. We become emotional, mental, map, guide, supports for people. But the way that we help people is not from a place of you are broken and I am saving you. Rather, we always come from a place of we're just walking this path together. We're walking this path together. I'm here with you. I believe in you. You can cry to me. You can process with me. I'll give you, tips and tricks from my experience. But ultimately, I trust you and I believe in you to get through your life struggle on your own. You're going to go through that natural growth process, and you're going to go through your essential struggle. And I'm not here to rescue you from that, because that pain and that struggle isn't wrong. I can see that you have your resource needs met, or that maybe you're struggling to, but you're learning, right? You're learning how to get it done. I'm not going to just keep giving you money. I'm going to believe in you to get a job slowly, takes little steps. And I'm going to support you lovingly, emotionally, right? And so like on the spiritual path, we don't tell people what to do or what not to do. We can help them understand, okay, well, how does what you're doing feel? What are you learning, right? What are you seeing? What are the insights? Let's process this together. You ask me a question. I can give you my insights. And maybe that's relevant for you or not. But we don't work from, okay, I'm going to give you the answer, right? And this is what you need to do, and it will stop you from being in pain, right? We need to start to renegotiate our relationship again with pain. That pain is not bad. Pain is showing us where we need to grow, always. So is that growth, we need resources? Is that growth, we need to learn something and we're just on our growth path and this is how we support people, right? So ultimately, we're not going to save the world and we're not going to give up and do nothing. We're going to focus on intention, right? I want to see a world where everyone has the basics of what they need so that they can grow into whatever their potential is, which is different for all of us. And then we build social safety nets and social systems that support the people who are just less capable in whatever system we have of meeting their own needs, and that allow the people who are just naturally more capable to give away some of that stuff. Because life is valuable. That's my perspective. I believe life is valuable no matter how productive or unproductive you are. I believe what it should be, whatever it is that you're capable of giving when you're resourced, should be enough. And especially when we're so technologically advanced and so rich, especially in the Western world, we can afford that. We can afford to support people. So why would we not? Why would we not just value human life for whatever it is, in whatever shape and form it is? So rather than profit being for profit's sake, it's we make profit so that we can support more people. And like I say, understanding that we're never going to have equality. It's not about that. And yes, there will be some people that game the system and that are lazy. That's not going to be the majority, right? We can't not do this out of fear of that. Because generally speaking, people don't like living like that. And I really believe that the people who do live like that are just traumatized. They just really got traumatized. I don't think even they are lazy or bad. I think they were really hurt and they became nihilistic for whatever reason. Like if we looked at their history and we looked at what happened to them, it's not that they're just lazy people. The system is messed up, right? So it's not our job to fix. The world's pain isn't wrong. It's not bad. And we look at our intention of we want to see the most people having a life where they are capable of becoming whatever they're going to become. And then we have to continue to look at the impact of our actions and be willing to admit where the impact doesn't match the intention and to change our action based on that information. We have to be humble and we have to be self-loving enough that when impact doesn't match intention, we change our action. We don't double down and say, no, I'm right about this. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because admitting that my impact isn't my intention makes me feel bad about myself. We can't make it about ourselves like that, right? We have to understand, it's like, okay, well, I was wrong. I was wrong about how I thought I was going to help. Thank you for telling me. I need to adjust my way of being. That's okay. It doesn't mean my intention was bad. It doesn't mean I am bad. It doesn't mean I meant to hurt. Of course I didn't. I wanted to help. And I didn't. That's okay. If I learn, we just learn from it, right? So again, it all comes down to self-love. And then we look at our day-to-day choices. Where do I have enough so I can redistribute? Where can I, just being myself, give to the world? And then understanding that your joy and your happiness and your peace of mind is not robbing from the collective, right? We want a world of people who have enough and can then be creative and give the thing that they're here to give. We want a world like that. So it's not wrong and bad to be in that place. Ask yourself, what can I do? What can I redistribute? What can I give? Am I doing that? And if the answer is yes, you're doing enough. Then live the rest of your life in joy, because you cannot get sad enough to make somebody happy. You cannot get poor enough to make somebody rich. You cannot get depressed enough to make the world happy. Yes? You holding yourself back from joy doesn't serve anybody. And we got to start to understand that, right? Like, you are not responsible for the way the world is. You didn't create the system. My sister always talks about the song, we didn't start the fire. Nobody alive today created the systems that don't work. It is not your fault. You didn't create it. We all inherited this. This is all a mess that we didn't make. We are being asked to clean up a mess we didn't make. So we can't start from shame and guilt and that we suck and that we have to save and we have to fix. And we have to understand that the problems are complex. We're an evolving species. Okay? So much of the problems that we have literally boil down to ignorance and what we don't know that we don't know. Okay, look at the spiral dynamics, human evolution. I put the link in the bio, or in the description. We're an evolving species. So much of this is growth pain. So much of this is just pain we need to learn from. And we need to change systems and build new systems based on what we're learning. But it's not wrong in the sense that it's exactly what should be happening based on the actions we're taking. Right? It's not, reality isn't getting it wrong. But if we want a different reality, we have to start to change our actions. And so we have to learn from the actions we're currently taking, why they're not giving us the results that we want. Yes, impact over intention. And then change our action so that the impact matches the intention. Global and micro. So again, I'm not perfect at this. I still go into savior mentality with my friends all the time. Well, not all the time. Like I say, I've really grown in this, but I still slip in it sometimes. That's okay. It was really, really conditioned into me. It's really, really conditioned into a lot of us. So we don't want to harden our hearts. We don't want to shut down and say people just suck and it's their own fault. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to be bleeding hearts where we feel like we have to do everything. We want to say, what can I do practically? Where can I practically redistribute where I can? Where can I give the thing that's unique to me to give? So like me being on my growth path and doing my thing creates all this content, right? Like me doing what is right for me and just living my life has created naturally a thing that I do that's supportive for others. And if we were all doing that, imagine the world we would have, right? It's not one person doing everything. It's every little person doing what they can do that is going to change the system. Every one of us doing what we can do, which is not nothing, and it's not everything. It's in the middle. You have some excess you can redistribute, and you have that growth path that you're on that you give that is naturally going to be something that gives back to the community in some way. And then you are a support, a loving support for processing and just, like I say, loving support for the natural growth process of the people that you love in your life. Like I say, if we all did that, we would have a resourced society. No one needs saving. They just need resource and support. And yeah, we're traumatized. And yeah, there's big problems. And yeah, there's a lot of mess we're going to have to clean up. I'm not saying we can like get rid of all addiction in a generation or something. But we can probably in 10 generations if we all did this. It's going to be slow, but it's the way, as far as I can see. Okay? So starting with compassion, what's your intention? That's lovely. Love yourself. You're not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. No one else is wrong. No one else is broken. It's all just evolution. We're learning. So where can you have an impact? Where can you redistribute resources that you can do? Where can you be on your growth path and then give what that is? And where can you just be a support for people who are going through their natural growth stuff? That's all you need to do. Because that's actual evolution. Okay? So I hope that's clear. I hope that's helpful. We want impact and intention to match. So we have to have self-love to be able to change when that's not happening. When we're getting called out, to listen, to change our actions. That's a good thing. Okay? All right. I love you. You're great. You're perfect. You got this. I believe in you. I know this is your growth path. I'm just here to tell you that you're great and you can do it. And you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure out, right? There is no way this is going to look. Okay, so the last thing is I often get the question, so does this mean we should all be minimalist? Does this mean we should all give away our stuff? Does this mean, no, we shouldn't all do anything. It's going to look different on all of us. right? What we can redistribute for some of us isn't anything. For some of us, it's millions of dollars. For some of us, the thing that we do supports hundreds and thousands of people. Sometimes the thing that we do supports one person, or no one sees it. It's just us doing our thing. Sometimes the 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 us being on our growth path is just us living a normal life, and we're just a nice person to the cashier, and we don't overconsume, we don't underconsume, and we make art and we do our job, and that's what we do, and that's our life. Or some of us, it's our career is helping, our career is this or that. It's different for all of us. There is no right way to do this in the sense of like what it looks like. Okay, how these principles of redistribution, do your own life path, be a support, look on all of us is going to look very different on all of us. The foundations are the same for all of us. We're all doing the redistribution that we can. We're all doing the be on my own growth path. And we're all doing the how do I just love and support people on their own growth path. But that is going to look different on all of us. Okay, so there's no way this has to look. It's you figure out for yourself how to do these things based on what is practical and reasonable for your life. And like I say, when we all do that, we create the new world together. Okay? So take those principles and then you figure out what is right for you now, and then allow that to evolve as you grow. It's going to change. What's right for you in those 3 areas today will be very different in 10 years. Okay? That's what truth is. Truth is the foundational principles that continually evolve. Look different on all of us. All right? So that's that. I love you. Mwah. See you next week.